Number is 0809 4440981. You can also tweet at smooth981. And we're streaming live on YouTube as well. So you can catch that live stream and even post a comment on there. Our analyst this morning, Mr. C and Gbubemi, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Mr. C. Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Gbubemi. Good morning, Lagos.
All right, let's start off with the first headline. And this one is coming from Premium Times. Tinubu signs executive orders to revamp oil gas sector. Gbubemi?
Okay, so an executive order is typically an instruction given by the president to expedite action on a particular issue or matter. It's the reasoning behind it is that sector probably needs some attention or immediate focus, and that executive order is issued to make things happen with regards to that. So with regards to this, the president has issued some executive orders to revamp the oil and gas sectors. And according to a statement by his special advisor on media and publicity, the policy directives were crafted after extensive consultations and benchmarking with global best practices. And basically, it focuses on amending primary legislation to introduce fiscal incentives for oil and gas projects, reduce contracting costs and timelines, and promote efficiency in local content requirements. This is in order to recognize the urgency to accelerate investments. So as we all know, oil and gas is our primary cash cow. It brings in the most revenue for the country. And fortunately, unfortunately, we've had quite a dip in our income, our revenues from oil and gas over the years, largely due to oil bunkering and theft and all of that. But there have been some improvements. There have also been some hopes regarding revitalization of the sector with the repairs of the I think two of our refineries, and with all of the expectation placed on the Dangote refinery as well. So there's been a lot of hope regarding revitalization of that sector. Contrast that with the fact that we all, quote and unquote, are aware that a lot of countries are also trying to move away from fossil fuels, which may represent a challenge, but so far it hasn't impacted on us so much. So these executive orders are a welcome development if it will enhance what currently operates in the sector. If we also recall, a version of the petroleum industry bill was signed by former President Buhari, I think either sometime last year or the year before, with which we also saw some form of progress regarding reforms in the oil and gas sector, chiefly with the NNPC. So all of this, are expected to sort of speed up activities that can impact on our revenue profile in that sector. For me, however, one of my key desires is, yes, we recognize the fact that we do have oil and gas and it's a cash cow for us, but it's time for us also. In fact, we're many years behind focusing on improving on other non-oil sectors to be able to generate as much revenue as possible. The focus is on revenue. The country is bleeding. We still need a lot of revenue to be able to impact on our plans for the year. Already, the budget is in place. Funding is required to make sure that those things happen. And expectations are largely on the oil and gas sector. But I also believe, that other sectors can also chip in the required revenue that's required. So it would be nice to also see some executive orders focused on non-oil sectors that also have potential to be able to impact on our revenue profile. But even as I say that as well, I recognize that, part of our challenges, are embedded in like the constitution, in the surrounding laws that affect some of the operations behind manufacturing, processing, importing, exporting, and all of that.
All right, thank you, Gbubemi, for that. Let's move on to the next headline, and this is coming from Daily Trust. Court remands 3 over Ibadan explosion. Mr. C?
Okay, so this is a fallout of the explosion that took place early in the year in Ibadan, where it was alleged by the Oyo State government through the governor of the state that certain foreign nationals were engaged in illegal possession and custody of explosive devices, and that's was what contributed to the explosion that was experienced in Ibadan. I believe I do recall some people were injured, but I'm not sure anyone died. But in the event anyone died, our thoughts continue to go out to their families. Now, the state government has made good its promise to bring to book those it believes are behind this unfortunate incident, and 3 foreign nationals were charged with 5 charges, and some of the charges are the use of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, stockpiling of radioactive materials, and dispersal of biological weapons. Now, I'm speaking as a lawyer. This is a ridiculous set of charges. There is no evidence from that date till now that suggests that biological weapons were being kept, let alone being used. There's no evidence that weapons of mass destruction were actually made, kept, or used. So I'm not sure what the prosecution hopes to achieve by putting these ridiculous charges in account. Now, more importantly, are these all the people that were supposedly behind the explosion? Now, we must remember that if a weapon of mass destruction was used or exploded, the death toll would have been very high. Same thing with a biological weapon. Our investigative agencies and their prosecutors should learn that it's not the number of charges or the number of counts that determines whether a conviction is secured. It is the practicality, it is the value of the charges you file. So you can file only 2 charges, you have evidence to support the 2 charges, and you get a conviction. Not you file 100 multiple counts and then you don't get a conviction. But that being said, this is a good step, and the foreign nationals who have been remanded now have their day in court to establish their innocence if they're able to, and provide material in support of the opposition to the charges. But more importantly, like I said earlier, prosecutors should learn to be effective, to be efficient. These charges of radioactive materials, dispersal of biological weapons, and weapons of mass destruction simply do not fly. And I would truly be surprised if a conviction is gotten on these charges.
All right, thanks for that, Mr. C. Let us know your thoughts. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. We're streaming live on YouTube as well, so you can post a comment underneath the live stream. Going on to the next headline, it's coming from Daily Trust. UN confirms over 200 women IDPs abducted in Borno.
You know, this calls to mind again the abduction of the Chibok girls in 2014. 200 is a very large number. And considering the fact that they were abducted from around the environs of the IDP camp that they were situated in. Now, it's alleged that they had wagered, you know, slightly beyond the perimeter of the IDP camp, and that was where they were abducted from. And this happened about a week ago. You know, I can just imagine how the concerned families are feeling. Already they've been displaced from their homes, and they've had to live in IDPs. You know, we understand that conditions surrounding living within those IDPs are not exactly stellar, because they've, you know, been taken away from their natural environs. You know, they've had to been subjected to, you know, whatever feeding, you know, has been provided, aid from international bodies and from the government and all of that. So it's like going from frying pan to fire, you know. But, you know, so one thing that always, you know, concerns me when we talk about all of these abductions is 200 is a large number of people to cart away at once. Surely
Right.
there must be some sort of trail, you know, there must be some sort of sign or something that they can use to track these people. And this happened about a week ago, you know. So it saddens me when I hear things like this, because I'm wondering, is it that there are no law enforcement officers around that area? You know, I know that the army is present in Borno State. Is it that the army is not there? You know, it would be nice to know what has been done in the last 1 week to be able to search for these people, because it's really inexcusable. And then when we consider the facts, you know, that you know, and this is a slight segue, we've been talking about SIM registration, you know, linking SIMs to NINs and all of that to enhance trackability and things like that. You know, I wonder why, and this is to the best of my knowledge, I haven't heard, about any single, bandits being caught because they, traced a phone call or something. We haven't heard of all these things. And if you've carted away 200 people, at the very least, you'd have to feed them, even if you're giving them 1 meal a day. You can imagine how substantial that meal would be. So where are they buying the food from? How are they providing for them in the interim? Who is complicit, with them? Because clearly, there must be some sort of complicity, in this involvement, and it goes without saying, that we call on the relevant authorities to speed up actions in terms of looking for them and rescuing them because they can be found. I just believe that, if they sit down properly and do the trackings and all of that, they should be able to find this. It's not one person, it's 200 people, and it's really, really inexcusable, considering also that it's International Women's Day on tomorrow, and a lot of these people who've been abducted are women, young boys, young girls, I mean, it's just saddening and it's inexcusable.
So let me quickly jump in on this, right? So I think rather than, if there's no complicity, there's clearly a dereliction of duty. There are police stations covering the distance between the IDP camp and wherever these unlucky individuals were taken to. There are army formations covering the same distance. So get the commanding officers of all these formations, all these units, to come and now explain what exactly transpired, because the era of people being abducted in large numbers and their hundreds, and then no security official is made to provide an explanation or tasked with recovering them, it's simply untenable, because 200 people, you have to, like Gbubemi said, you have to move them from point A to point B. And from that distance between A and B, surely there's at least one police station, there's at least one police area command, there's at least one military camp. What exactly happened? How did they miss them? So these are questions that security agencies in Borno would have to provide. And let's continue to trust that the abducted individuals will be reunited with their loved ones.
All right, let's go on to the messages coming through via WhatsApp. D says, concerning the charges on the Ibadan blast, the prosecutors would have it otherwise. It's the charge. Okay, the prosecutors have it, otherwise the charges wouldn't have been filed. Let's allow them to do their work. They may not need to make their evidence public. It's for the courts. Another message. This one is coming from, I can't see a name here, eBay from Abuja. eBay says, I have a conspiracy theory for the Ibadan case. Could it be that the prosecution team are deliberately using these charges so that at the end of the day, the judge will dismiss the case for lack of proof? Like you said, it's a conspiracy theory with no evidence to back that up. Sajideen says, explosions. I'm a conspiracy theorist. They charge them with all these to be eventually freed. Another conspiracy theorist, okay. And another message coming from Idima Puza. And Idima Puza says, the federal government should declare a state of emergency on insecurity. They should stop playing lip service, abolish open grazing, which gives room for some bandits in the bush. Ranching should be encouraged in all states. To make for easier policing, state police should be established. NIN and BVMs should be made functional. If they're functioning, there won't be kidnappings and other crimes that could be traced or tracked. Once the above four suggestions are followed, insecurity will be a thing of the past. May God help Nigeria. Do stay with us. The conversation continues shortly.
Listening to symphony of body parts directed by the mainstream. When you walk, it is like watching a G clap stroll across an octave accented by a C sharp. When you talk, the cadence of your voice is a tenor saxophone, making love to a cello at perfect pitch. And you are so smooth. That's why we keep it here on 98.1. This is Justin Needed, signing out. You are listening to the Smooth Breakfast right here on Smooth 98.1.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. We have the analysts in. We're looking at the news stories that are making the headlines. We'd love to get your thoughts. You can send them through via WhatsApp 0809 4440981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. Our analyst this morning, Mr. C and Gbubemi. Let's go on to the next headline. And this one is coming from Punch. Minimum wage, Labour slashes demand to 500,000 naira.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I'm going to respond to a comment that was made very quickly. When biological weapons or weapons of mass destruction are used, the evidence is clear for everyone to see. Just go back to cases where they were used in Iraq, where they were used in Syria, and the evidence is clear. BBC, CNN, they all have the evidence. So I don't understand that comment. Now, to the story. Labour, so we need to track back. Last year, Labour commenced the process of renegotiating the national minimum wage. Now, at the point in time, they had suggested 200,000 naira. And when they suggested 200,000 naira, the dollar was about 800 or 900 naira. Now it's about 1,006, 1,007. Now, there were talks that they were contemplating asking for 1 million naira. Now there are strong indications that they'll be requesting for 500,000 naira. Why has this become important? Because we're going to have about 6 or 8 regional meetings all over the country to discuss the new national minimum wage, which must come into effect in April. Now, why has this become necessary? It is crystal clear to everyone that the cost of living has gone up. The prices of foodstuff, the prices of essential services, even the price of petrol has gone up. Now, the challenge, we're also dealing with runaway inflation, and we're now dealing with the fact that civil servants no longer have salaries that even leave the office, talk less of taking them home. Now, there's talk about getting a new minimum wage that actually makes sense. But we must carefully put this together against the backdrop of the fact that the current economic realities are quite interesting and quite challenging for Nigeria, both at national and subnational levels, and I dare say even the local government levels. So on one hand, there is the understanding that the salary has to be increased, and the current national minimum wage is 30,000 naira. So it is clear from all parties that that wage has to go up. The question now is the quantum. Now, is 500,000 naira realistic in these times? The answer to the question depends on what side of the divide or what perspective or what school of thought you belong to. Now, from the basis of the fact that it cannot purchase a lot of things, it cannot adequately deal with the cost of living, it will be safe to say that it's even insufficient. However, that is the ideal situation. You must have a wage that encourages you to put in your best at work. However, on the flip side, if we fix it at 500,000 naira, we fix it at 600,000 naira, we fix it at 700,000 naira, or even 300,000 naira, the bigger question and the realistic question remains, how many state governments can pay these wages? And I say this on the backdrop of a number of states owing multiple months of salary arrears. So it's a balancing act that needs to be done. And when you take into consideration also the prices of certain basic foodstuffs, you then realize that even the 500,000 naira is not really a lot. But maybe it's a strategic move by Labour that start high, end low, so that if they start at 500,000, when the negotiations go back and forth as they should go, they'll probably end up, say what, 150, 200, 250, 300. But I'm not sure they're going to get 500,000 naira. I'm not sure that, I do not know 5 states that can readily and comfortably pay 500,000 naira a month as minimum wages. Because we must remember, this minimum wage goes to the least ranked worker and then works its way up the salary scale. So big questions, but let's see what comes out of the 8 regional meetings. And then let's see what comes out after their reports are then deliberated upon by the committee of 37 people set up by the government to ensure that by April, we have a new national minimum wage.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. C. Let's go on to some messages coming through. Ajayi says, it's shocking that even as we thought the activities of terrorists are on the decline, they've managed to carry out another raid on an IDP camp, resulting in the abduction of over 200 women and children. It means that since 2014, no effective security measure has been developed to avoid these ugly incidents. Gilbert Musa says, on the recent abduction of 200 in Borno State, it clearly points to the conflicting information that we hear about our security operatives being on top of the game in the Northeast. There is need for us to reinforce our security architecture by seeking collaboration from fellow African countries. Clearly, we are not in control right now. And Gary says, how could 200 people be easily moved from point A to B without anyone knowing? Keep the messages coming. The number is 0809 440 981. And let's move on to the headline coming from Premium Times. Niger government acquires additional 2,000 equipment to help boost agriculture.
So the Niger State government, in partnership with Origin Group, which is a private sector agricultural value chain company, is providing or has provided over 2,000 pieces of equipment to farmers, spread across spread across the state. So the equipment received include 500 large capacity tractors, 500 harvesters of varying capacities, and 1,000 different agricultural and irrigation equipment and farm implements. For those who don't know, Niger State is the largest state by landmass in the country, and they have a lot of arable land suitable for agriculture. A few weeks ago, we also spoke about a partnership between Niger State, I think it was Niger, Kogi, and Kirby, with regards to synergizing their efforts towards agricultural production. So this support from the Origin Group is quite welcome. It would help the states to grow its capacity in terms of fulfilling its agricultural objectives, which should consequently impact on states' revenue, as a result of, providing food for the nation. On the back of that as well, they've also signed an MOU, that's the Niger State government have also signed an MOU with the Lagos State government on the Produce for Lagos initiative. So this is a long-term strategic partnership between Niger State and Lagos State, where Niger State will produce some food items such as tubers, legumes, and grains, and the Lagos State government will act as off-takers to purchase these produce from the Niger State government. Now, this is a welcome development because largely one of the issues with farming is after you've made the produce, now you need to find, your buyer. So from the production to storage to selling and all of that. So this is, they've at least got one client in that sense in the Lagos State government who will be off-taking their produce. Now, even as I acknowledge that this is a good development, because agriculture is one of our potential focus areas in this country as a revenue generator, I also recognize the fact that there's also banditry and insecurity in large parts of these areas. We've also got reports from Niger State previously in the past about acts of bandits, and there I say even terrorists. So food security for the farmers is key. As it is now, one of the reasons why we've had issues with food availability all over the country is because many of the farmers can't even go into the farm because they're not assured of their safety. There's a likelihood that if they go to the farms, that they can be abducted by kidnappers or bandits. So that is one area that this when we hear about things like this, that is one area that has remained silent. So how do we ensure that the farmers are actually safe and secure on their lands? How are we sure that they will not go to the farms today and be abducted tomorrow, which would consequently obviously affect, things like this. So I think putting security ahead of all of these kind of arrangements is very, very key, because without ensuring the security of the lives of the farmers, such plans just become null and void.
All right, thank you for that, Gbubemi. Let's move on to the next headline from The Guardian. Delta State House of Assembly condemns non-implementation of anti-grazing law.
Okay, so the Delta State House of Assembly is concerned that 3 years after passing an anti-grazing law, that nothing has been done about it, and there are multiple instances of cattle openly grazing within the territory of Delta State. Now, this speaks volumes of their oversight over the last 3 years and speaks volumes of their commitment to the laws they pass. However, a recent meeting was held with the security agencies, and the security agencies were tasked with ensuring that this business of open grazing stops. And fingers crossed, let's see what comes out of it, because as we're already aware, most of the security agencies take the instructions from their respective headquarter formations, not from any state government. However, we also do know that state governments that are prepared to work, that have shown that they know what to do, have found ways to liaise with these security agencies to ensure that their various objectives are accomplished. Now, there's a second part of the story, and it's very sad and disturbing. 3 police officers were abducted by criminal elements, unknown criminal elements, and a rescue team made up of policemen sent to look for the abducted or missing officers were found killed, and our thoughts go out to the families of the slain officers who died in the line of duty, and also to the abducted officers who are still in forced captivity. And it also speaks to the insecurity pervading the land, and the security agencies, they're doing their best given the tough and challenging climes and environment they're operating in, but they should not lose their morale. They shouldn't lose the hope, and continue to work together to protect the lives and properties of citizens.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. C. Oluwaseyi via WhatsApp says, if there's any indication a biological or radioactive weapon was used or stored in any area of Ibadan where there was an explosion, we would have seen the evidence by now because it wouldn't be hidden. The explosion would have spread whatever toxins, biological or radioactive, over a very large area. The Nigerian government that I know would not have been able to hide the evidence and fallouts, because there have been reports of people suffering from radioactive related illnesses and also people coming down with strange illnesses. The government is not really thinking that the people are that smart. I'm more inclined to believe the conspiracy theorists in this matter than the government and its charges. D says the charge of dispersal of biological weapons implies that the accused individuals were involved in either the possession and or the actual use of biological weapons, not necessarily usage.
I'm sorry. When you disperse a gas or a liquid, it speaks to usage. I wish people would just read what they type before they send it.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thanks for your messages. Thanks for listening. And special thanks to our analyst for joining us this morning, Mr. C and Gbubemi. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Do stay with us. There is a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
Bye, Zibby.